Hi everyone, today we're going to look at the physiologic adaptations of giraffes and look at some locomotion patterns and apply what we have learned in class to giraffes. First, I'd like to start off with just an introduction to giraffes. So giraffes are large ruminant animals. More specifically, they are classified as concentrate selectors as they tend to browse more nutrient-dense material like trees and shrub leaves. They tend to avoid grasses, which tend to be more fibrous. For height, giraffes can range anywhere from 14 to 19 feet tall. Females will typically weigh around 1,700 pounds, and males are slightly bigger at about 2,600 pounds. And typically, the lifespan of a giraffe is about 25 years. So we're going to take some time to talk about the respiratory system of a giraffe. I actually found an article looking at the respiratory physiology of a giraffe. It's of a singular giraffe who was under anesthesia for a foot operation, and they took the time while the giraffe was under anesthesia to do some studies on how they breathe and ventilation and perfusion. So we learned in class that ventilation is the movement of air in and out of the lungs, and perfusion is the blood flow within the lungs to the alveoli. So it was thought that there would be significant mismatch in the ventilation-perfusion ratio, which would be when oxygen would reach the lungs without blood flow or vice versa. So they thought that there was going to be some mismatch because giraffes are so large and then therefore the gravitational forces acting on them. However, it was found that the giraffe had similar gas exchanging capacity to other animals under anesthesia, so that includes a person, a horse, a rat, and some other animals, which I thought was pretty interesting. Another interesting fact that even though giraffes have long necks and therefore a long trachea, the dead space to tidal volume ratio is actually similar to other mammals. So dead space, which is the area where no gas exchange would occur, so between the nostrils and the alveoli, to tidal volume, which would be the normal volume of air inhaled and exhaled in a breath, is similar to other animals. So this is actually explained by giraffes having a very narrow trachea and a large tidal volume. So their trachea is much narrower than other animals, and they breathe a large amount of air in. So the narrowness of a giraffe's trachea is actually thought to increase the resistance during exercise, whereas a horse who has a wider trachea, even though it's much shorter, would have less resistance. So a horse and a giraffe are going to have a similar dead space to tidal volume ratio, but a horse who's exercising compared to a giraffe that's exercising, the horse is going to face less resistance. The cardiovascular system of a giraffe is pretty interesting considering they have to pump blood from the heart all the way to their brain and other extremities. Since blood has to travel such a large distance to get to the brain, giraffes tend to have high blood pressure. Their blood pressure tends to be about twice that of a human. Because of such a high blood pressure, the left ventricle of the heart becomes more muscularized. But unlike in humans, the muscles don't stiffen, so giraffes don't necessarily have the same negative effects that people with high blood pressure do. Giraffes also experience a longer ventricular filling phase in order to allow the left ventricle to fill with more blood to be distributed to the rest of the body. We also see that blood vessels tend to be thicker to accommodate for this high blood pressure in giraffes. In the legs of giraffes, they're pretty slender, and in order to prevent pooling and help aid in blood returning to the heart, there's tight wrapping of connective tissue and skin, which helps move blood against gravity and aid in circulation. The blood vessels that are found in the legs of giraffes are narrow but very thick-walled in order to accommodate the blood pressures and prevent blood pooling. As you can see in the picture, when giraffes drink, they obviously have to lower their head pretty significantly from where it naturally rests. And when they pick up their head, you would expect them to have like a giant head rush, like when you stand up too fast. But giraffes actually have a lot of adaptations to prevent blood pooling in the brain and blood rushing back down towards the heart. So there are actually valves in the jugular vein that helps prevent backflow or blood pooling in the brain when giraffes drink. So these valves stop the blood from either rushing to the head or rushing back down to the heart. So I did find some information on thermoregulation in giraffes. There was one study that was conducted on several giraffes in Africa, and it wasn't in a controlled system, obviously, since giraffes are a hard research animal to come across, and so it was done outside. But they were able to tell that the exhaled air temperature was lower than the body temperature. Um, and so we can tell because giraffes have such a large nasal cavity, there's a large surface area, and so this large nasal cavity allows blood and air to be cooled as it enters the body or leaves the body, so heat can dissipate. We also talked about in class how ungulates have a carotid rete, which cools blood going to the brain, and may also allow heat loss without evaporation, water evaporation. So this could possibly allow giraffes to conserve water in the hot environments that they live in. There was also some information how giraffe coloring can help them release heat from their body. So it's thought that clusters of blood vessels and sweat glands under the brown spots could help release heat from the body. So now to get into more locomotion and how giraffes move, I looked at an article called The Locomotor Kinematics and Ground Reaction Forces of Walking Giraffes. This study utilized several giraffes in a zoo setting and used ground force plates to analyze the walking gait of the giraffes. So the predominant gait of a giraffe is a walk. Giraffes spend most of their days walking tree to tree, looking for different leaves and browse to eat. They really only run when they are running from something, so that is why they analyzed the walk rather than a faster gait that they don't typically use. So when you watch a giraffe walk, their walk actually seems very similar to a pace that you could see in horses, which is when limbs on the same side of the body will move at the same time. So you'll see the forelimb and the hind limb move simultaneously on the left side, and then the right side, the forelimb and hind limb will move simultaneously. But what was interesting about this study is the gait analysis actually showed that the footfall pattern is not consistent with the pace, although it may seem like it is. Giraffes actually have a unique gait to them. They also said that giraffes have forelimb based weight distribution. So this is actually pretty common in quadrupeds as the forelimbs support the neck and the head, and as giraffes have a pretty heavy neck as it's so long, giraffes support a lot of their weight on their forelimbs. They also looked at how giraffes changed as they got faster, how their walk changed as they got faster. So they did this by handlers changing their speed. So handlers would move faster, encouraging the giraffes with feed. And that's how they dictated how fast the giraffe was going. And what they found was that when giraffes accelerated, their necks would move more, and they think that because their necks are moving, as giraffes accelerate and move their necks more, that may dictate their changes in gait and whether or not they progress to a different gait from a walk. They also found that as giraffes accelerate, they have lower stride frequencies but longer stride lengths. So with those long legs, rather than moving their legs faster, they actually just move them and create a longer stride to run faster. So that was pretty interesting as far as giraffe locomotion goes.